She's Katy Montgomery. He's Justin Joseph. These best friends are serving subpoenas to bad advice weekly with Wrong Way Forward. The advice column reboot you never knew you needed. Sparks fly. And so does the hilarity. Now, here's Katy and Justin.
So welcome everyone to our inaugural episode of Wrong Way Forward. I'm Justin Joseph here with Katy Montgomery. We are so excited to have you all with us today as we launch our first podcast journey. It's been a long way getting here.
34 years, Justin. 34 years.
How long we've known each other?
I know.
It's crazy. You remember when we met?
We did. We met at orientation at Loyola University New Orleans. And you were there with a bunch of guys, and we're sitting in the row ahead of us. And we've just been attached at the hip kind of ever since.
Ever since. I remember being there, like you said, with my high school friends. And I heard Southern cackling behind me. And I turned around and said, I got to know who this is. And it was Katy Montgomery.
And we went to the quad and we hung out, and you taught me the term 24/7. And I thought it was so clever. And then we had 4 crazy years in college, including our senior year when I was student body president and
I was student body vice president.
Yeah. And, we're going to be talking about Wrong Way Forward. And I think probably one of our beginning, taking the wrong way forward was probably when we were in student government.
Yeah, you got to hire a staff, obviously. I was your underling, which was, I think, hard for me as a type A person just to have someone over me.
It was hard, and I just want to remind the audience, Justin was my underling.
I think you probably loved it.
Of course I did. I'm a firstborn child, Aries, extrovert. Of course. I want to control everything.
Yeah, and so you did. You hired a staff.
Yes.
And I think for some reason we had a blowout fight about something. So Katy and I she was in love with me for a small period.
Justin!
Even though she couldn't figure out when I was making my own chairs. What do you call that?
Upholstery.
Thank you.
Well, I think it was positive male attention. I wasn't, it's not like they were lining up.
Well,
so. Were you about to say that's true?
No, that's not what I meant. But I just think it's funny that when I was upholstering my own chairs in my room, that it never occurred to you that maybe I didn't play for
I think I was like so creative. That's so interesting. Can I upholster one with you?
Yes. Well, then you would go and have your chairs upholstered by high-end people. Do you remember?
It wasn't high end. I bought 2 chairs at the Goodwill, and I chose a fabric at Calico Corners.
But what I thought was crazy about that is first, no one actually did that in college. And then you had to wait on those chairs. There were like 6 months that they were upholstering them. And I thought and you were so excited about them.
I was. And you know what? And then I got them and I took them to South Dakota and I traveled with them to DC. And when I think about those chairs right now, they make me cringe. They weren't even that cute.
But you hired a staff of like 5 to 8 people? I don't remember.
I think so, yeah.
And we had a blowout fight, as we sometimes did. I remember, like you said, we would get in fights and you'd get out of the car.
I would. I mean, I needed a dramatic exit.
Yep, you still do.
Yes, correct.
But I don't remember what one of our big fights was. It was a big fight we did. And our offices were literally right next door to each other.
Right next door to each other. I mean, we were in the same space.
And so Katy my office is first as she came in. And so she'd have to walk by my office. And so that was drama every time she walked by. It was.
Yes. I mean, I used it to its full advantage.
But at some point we decided we hated one of the members of our staff who we will not name because I don't want to.
I want to put a little twist on that. I wouldn't say hate. We were professional and we thought he was not handling his role, which involved, finances well.
Yes.
And so we decided to terminate his employment.
To fire him.
Correct.
And we were so proud of ourselves.
And we put together this entire case and it went before the student government for a vote.
Oh, I remember that.
And he got us good because this is pretty funny because we both ended up going to law school. What idiots we were. He ended up pulling out some HR law in the state of Louisiana out of nowhere, and he got us good. Yeah. So it really was the wrong way forward.
It was wrong way forward, and then we had to work with him for the remainder of our year.
Yeah.
But it brought us closer.
It brought us closer together, and I think it's always good to learn how to just deal with awkwardness.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the precipice is that the right word? Precipice or launch of the podcast? What's the word I want?
I mean, I don't know. I'm so thrown off by the word precipice. I can't think.
Yeah, well, I agree. It's gross. Let's never use precipice. It's the wrong way forward.
It is the wrong way forward, Justin.
All right. So let's talk about the podcast. So firstly, your background, you've got a varied background. I've got a varied background.
Yes.
We're kind of trying to take all of that
Correct.
and bring it together for the podcast.
Yes, definitely. So we're both lawyers. And I think if you think non-practicing lawyers, that's the key. And thank God.
Actually, I have my license is active.
Well,
just for like a year.
God forbid. But I think, if you think about the typical lawyer, they like an argument. They, like to look for the evidence. They like to ask questions. And so I think we both come with that kind of skill set. And then I've been fortunate enough to work with a number of business schools. And so, if you think about kind of leadership, what makes people tick, cultures and organizations. So I like kind of coming from that angle.
Sure.
And I'm currently working as an executive coach and a faculty member in executive education. So, I like asking questions and I like being curious, which I think your amazing background, just for the note to everyone, Justin actually has an Emmy. I can see it in the corner of my eye, which is really impressive. But talk about what you did after you left.
So I was in college, and I think you'll remember this when OJ, the white Bronco chase, was up on screen. And I'll never forget, Greta Van Susteren was on with her original face.
Yes.
And I thought, well, if she can look like that on TV, I can look like this on TV. Okay, we'll edit that out perhaps. Anyway, that was her original face.
Yes.
And I thought, well, I want to be a legal analyst. So I also went to law school, and I was there for exactly enough to prosecute one murder case so that I could say when I got on TV. Well, when I prosecuted murder cases. So I did that, and then I started going to Wyoming because in TV you move up markets. So Cheyenne was my first market, then Omaha, and then back to Denver. But I was offered a talk show in my first market called On Scene with Justin Joseph. And I remember sitting on my couch and saying, Katy, I'm going to call Katy and see if she wants to do it. Do you remember that call?
I do remember that call. And unfortunately, at that time, I wasn't able to say yes. And so we have on and off talked about a version of this for the 34 years we've known each other. And fortunately, you came into DC for business. We had some martinis and you popped the question and I said yes.
You said yes.
I said yes. And here we are, putting together our first episode.
Yeah. And I'm going to also say, like, the reason I thought then is I thought now to call you is because I think having known you for all this time and having seen your amazing accomplishments, and even just back in the student government days, I've always thought you had something to say, and what a great vehicle this is to say.
Well, and likewise, I mean, the reason I said yes is because I think you have something to say. I think your background and your ability to question and be curious, but also I just have a really good time with you.
Exactly. And hopefully that comes through.
And hopefully y'all have a good time.
And to be very frank, this is our second take at this first block. And it's because our first one, we were both like, that was not great.
It was the wrong way forward.
It were really much more fun than that. We're much more fun.
You're more funner? Yeah.
Anyway, and so the goal, I think, of Wrong Way Forward is maybe we talk just for a moment of how we got here. We thought we've been thinking when you hear some of this bad advice, there's a better way.
There's a better way. And it's not just even advice. We are seeing what's happening, our observations, and hopefully what we're going to be hearing from y'all. And, and hopefully this will evolve into hearing the worst advice you've heard. So we can break that down, have some takeaways, and then, and have a good time while we're doing it.
And I also think the interesting thing about what we bring to the table is your background. You're Southern. I mean, as Southern as they come. What city are you from?
I'm from Tupelo, Mississippi, the birthplace of Elvis Presley.
So you're going to bring a Southern take.
Yes, and you're based in Denver, so you've kind of got that Midwest Rocky Mountain kind of exposure, which I think, and I think this leads me to kind of the community that we have here thus far. Is we want to thank everyone who's kind of joined us, and right now, as of this kind of inaugural taping, we have people who have downloaded our trailer across 70 cities and 11 countries.
That's amazing.
So we do want that kind of, diversity of opinion. Yes. So we can kind of really figure out what's the right way forward, which doesn't really work with just one viewpoint.
Exactly. So we'll be bringing a variety of viewpoints. We will get you all involved in the conversation. We're going to tackle popular advice from the week, and we are so excited to do it.
So excited.
Yeah. So when we come back, we're going to talk about a recent incident. Katy and I in a restaurant.
Yes.
I behaved completely appropriately.
No, you didn't.
I'll tell you all about that when we get back. We'll be right back with our inaugural edition of Wrong Way Forward.
There we go. You've been listening to Wrong Way Forward, where bad advice goes to die and then gets resurrected just so we can roast it again.
That's right, Katy. Nobody's off limits, not the gurus, not the influencers, and definitely not Oprah.
Sorry, Oprah.
If you're enjoying the chaos, hit like and subscribe and come back every Thursday for new episodes.
Have a new topic or some disastrously bad advice you want to dissect? Email wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Include your contact info.
Now back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katy and Justin podcast.
So welcome back. And I want to follow up on a word Justin used. He said an incident at a restaurant. Incidents rarely indicate something positive. Incident, I think, is more of a negative connotation. So I would like to say that this was something that was not good. I strongly would like to label this as the wrong way.
All right. And well, let me start with what happened. So you're in town.
Yes.
We go to one of my favorite restaurants.
I was so excited to go. Yes. And I want to point out, I was very excited. I'm at the top of the mountain.
Okay. You're about to say I'm going to bring you down.
I mean, that's a good guess.
So Katy came into town last night, and we were at dinner, and there were drinks.
Yes, but I mean, I want to state for the record. I mean, we went to college in New Orleans, so we've got a lot of friends from college listening. When I say drinks, this was on the tame side. So we cannot use alcohol consumption as an excuse.
No, but bad behavior nevertheless. So we go to this really nice restaurant in Denver, one of my favorite restaurants. I'm not going to name it because I don't want to get sued on our first episode. And we were... Let me start by saying the one thing you can do to upset me is try and take advantage of me. It just sets me off. And that could be in any setting. I mean, it doesn't have to be in the food and drink setting.
Correct. It hit your value system. You were triggered.
Yes, I was triggered. And so last night, since I go to this restaurant all the time, I knew the bottle of wine. I didn't even look at the wine list. I was like, do you have the XYZ wine? And she was nasty, I thought, the waitress.
Well, I mean, I want to give some context here. Justin asked for a particular bottle of wine. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but he really wanted it because it was cheap.
It was the second most expensive on the list.
Which we also know that if there are studies that have shown that the second least expensive wine is actually the worst. It's priced a certain way, but mentally people go for that to show they're not the cheapest.
First question. I think that's a bunch of bullshit. But there's the first customer.
Well, there you go. Ding dong. So, but he asked for this wine and she goes, I don't think we have it. And then Justin decided to dig in, and you were pissed because you're like, why is a wine listed on the wine list that is not in the inventory, which is very common. I've eaten at a lot of restaurants, including a lot of very nice Michelin star restaurants, and that happens.
And I think it's really easy to run. I could print it out in 2 seconds, an updated wine list. So that is not an excuse to me. Print out an updated wine list. This was a one-page wine list. It was not a book. It was one page.
It was more than one page. That's not factually correct. If we keep going, we'll get to 3-4 pages. And so Justin started just oozing attitude.
Yes. Well, not.
And then she matched. There is something called emotional contagion. She matched your attitude to attitude.
Either way, yes. Now, I will also say we had a bad experience at the restaurant with the same waitress before. We were trying to recall what that was. So
I think also you were fit to be tied from something that happened earlier in the day. So you were just pissed and you needed to channel that. And so you decided to dump it on the waitress.
Then what happens is she goes to get their sommelier and he comes over and within 2 seconds, he's upselling us on a magnum of wine.
A magnum of the cheap one.
Do they make cheap magnums? I don't know.
Said we could take the rest home.
I know, but that's where getting back to the original point. He was trying to take advantage of the situation and upsell me. And that was when I lost it.
You did lose it, which I want to point out for the record was fine with Justin, but it made his 2 dinner companions very uncomfortable. And I would like to go back to my Southern roots. I was your guest and you made me very uncomfortable.
Well, I think that's totally fair. I mean, I did, no doubt, but I don't like being taken advantage of. And if you have to suffer a little for me to stand by my principles, I'm sorry.
And again, I can't help but go back into coach mode But there's someone named Byron Katy who has these kind of 4 questions. And the first question is you have made the decision that this person was trying to upsell you.
Yeah.
So my first question would be like, do you know that that's true?
Well, it was an upsell. That doesn't mean he was taking advantage of me. It was an upsell. He was upselling us.
Right. I mean, and do you know that that's absolutely true?
Sure. It was definitely an upsell. He was taking us from.
And what would it have been like at that dinner if you had not had that feeling, or you weren't telling yourself that?
Well, if he would have come over and said, "How about trying this other bottle of wine?" there would not have been an issue. The minute I heard Magnum I shut everything.
And I'd like to just state for the record, this ended with us buying 3 individual glasses that surpassed the amount of the original bottle.
And they took an hour to get there because they were penalizing us. So
I'm sure they went and pissed in the wine. That's our second curse word.
Okay, well, that may be. Having said that, I think for me, the takeaway, and we'll cover this more after the break, I think for me, the takeaway is, if I have to make you feel uncomfortable to stand by my principles, that's just the way I am.
And I think my takeaway is that if this is a principle that you're going to die on, to leave one of your best friends of 34 years and your life partner, your husband, uncomfortable, we've got some whacked out kind of values here.
All right. And we'll talk more about this after the break. We'll be right back after this.
thanks for streaming Wrong Way Forward, the weekly reminder that advice is usually free for a reason. We call out bad advice wherever it hides: boardrooms, break rooms, and even book clubs.
Enjoying this dumpster fire? Like, subscribe, and check back every Thursday for new episodes. Want us to roast your favorite piece of nonsense? Email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to include your contact info. We're not psychic, just judgmental. And now, back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katy and Justin podcast.
So we're back, and we need to kind of wrap this up and kind of summarize, if our listeners are paying attention, how can we prevent them from taking the wrong way forward?
Well, let's first state our final argument, final
okay.
position. Here's my final argument. Principles are important. I know you agree with that. I know that's not an argument. And for me, what happened at the restaurant had less to do with the fact that they didn't keep up with their wine list in the next restaurant, and more to do with the fact that they tried to upsell me. They took a bad opportunity, bad situation, and made it worse. And my principle says I still need to say something. And so we end up getting cheap wine anyway by the glass.
Well, actually, those 3 glasses cost more than the cheap bottle of wine that you wanted. And I think my takeaway is that, relationships are incredibly important, and our time with each other is not long for this world. If you think you live in Denver, I live in DC, we have busy schedules. I just arrived, and I would have instead focused that time on spending time with the people that you love the most and having a conversation.
With good wine.
With good wine, which is usually not, if I might repeat, the second least expensive bottle on the menu. I would have instead focused there, and I would have let that roll off my back.
So we're going to agree to disagree on this one.
Yeah, but wrong way forward, Justin.
Okay, fair enough. All right, moving on. So I think the interesting thing about it is it does come down to manners, and I think we have another thing we can talk about on manners. So we did a podcast launch party this weekend, and it was well attended.
Yes.
And but there were several people we expected to be there that had RSVP'd and didn't come. Your thoughts on just the general RSVPing versus not RSVPing, et cetera?
I read an article which I thought was so interesting. It's like, when you used to have to actually pick up a real phone,
Right.
And call someone, and then you had the fear of being talked out of something or hearing the disappointment in someone's voice, you followed through. Now in this digital age, you can just drop a text. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I have so many windows open. It just, slipped my mind. When somebody is hosting, they are taking time and energy. And in a lot of situations, they are making preparations based on numbers.
100%.
And I think to RSVP and then not attend is incredibly rude. I think it's the wrong way forward. And I think it's particularly rude. I think things do come up. I think things do come up.
Is the question, is there a way to gracefully exit RSVP?
I think so. I think that, I think, again, generally you want to give as much notice as possible, you know? And again, I think people always understand things happen, but I think it's sending a message and saying, unfortunately, something's come up and we're not going to be able to attend.
Yeah.
I think there's a lovely way to also do that, to say, for example, this happened to be a podcast launch. I followed and I sent it to 5 of my friends, making a nice gesture to say, the fact that I can't be there, I am actively engaged and I'm interested in your success.
I love that. I think that's so well said. I think the other interesting thing is, one of my big takeaways as I turned 50 is no is a complete sentence. And
Yes.
if I didn't want to go, you just say, I can't be there.
Correct.
Right.
100%.
And I also really try, when I do decline something, to tell the truth. I never would say, no, I can't be there. I have another engagement. If I don't have another engagement, I try and be honest in all of my responses, but it's still tacky just not to show up.
Well, and I think, kind of talking about what you were saying, it hurts more for someone to RSVP and not show up because you take it personally. It's because it's not appropriate behavior, because it's the wrong way forward. Whereas someone, if they RSVP no, you would never have those thoughts and emotions. You would be like, they can attend, and your brain can go anywhere as to why that is. And so the fact of RSVPing yes and not showing up, that's when it starts to hit you.
How do you feel about people who don't RSVP at all? You ask for an RSVP and they either don't respond at all and don't come, or do respond or don't respond and do come.
I mean, I've tried really hard to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? It's kind of that David Sedaris, like the generous assumption for people.
I don't know what that is. Tell me about that.
The idea is that, you think the best rather than think the worst. So the example is this: someone cuts you off in traffic and you want to go, flip the bird.
That's totally me.
That is 100% you. Instead, if you could stop and say, maybe that person's cutting me off in traffic because they're running their kid to the emergency room.
And you really tell me you do this?
I try. I mean, it's a constant struggle, right? And so it's giving people the generous assumption. But it's hard for me because even if we talk about RSVPs, I am so type A and on top of my emails. And I know not everyone is like that, but I do think people should try their best to RSVP. I do want to give one footnote to that. The problem now with everything being so digital is some things can go to trash. Some things can get kind of, in the shuffle. But I do think you should try your best to RSVP, and I think you should try your best to attend or give sufficient notice, and a follow through that just shows that you're interested and you care.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you think RSVP has become antiquated?
I hope not, because, again, unfortunately, and we'll talk about this in a future episode about relationships, I haven't gotten married. But if I were to get married, I would really want to know a head count. That's an expensive function.
Can we tell a story about the RSVP of the date that didn't happen?
I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm scared.
The guy you met in DC? Would you like to save that for a future episode on dating?
Are you talking about the one you met, or the one I met in New York who wanted to take me out in DC?
Then you RSVP.
You know what?
Should we save that for the relationship episode?
We'll save that for the relationship
It's a good
episode.
story.
I mean, don't prop it up too much.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I think the question is it become antiquated? I really would prefer just like on the podcast. I think in the podcast launch, I didn't even ask for RSVPs. I got RSVPs from several people who said they'd be there, that didn't show up.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because they felt compelled to tell me they'd be there and then they didn't come.
Well, I RSVP'd, so I think it defaulted to that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I didn't care how many people showed up. I wanted it more to be about liking us and following us, etc.
Yes. And on that note, if you are listening to us, we would love for you to give us a like and a follow, because we've got some great episodes coming up.
Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about what we've got coming up in our future episodes?
Yeah. So we are gonna be talking about relationship deal breakers. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be talking about pet peeves.
Pet peeves. That's such a good one because shockingly, I have a million of them.
Shockingly, yes.
One of them is upselling me or trying to give me a bottle of cheap wine.
I think the audience understands.
So pet. Also going to be looking, one of the biggest advice givers out there and people who think she walks on water. We're going to be showing you why some of Oprah's advice is wrong way forward.
And I think this is kind of amazing because, Oprah was the queen for you.
She was.
I mean, you had an autographed picture that was framed.
Did. I've been to her show several times.
Yes.
We had a college friend who was one of her producers, and so I took full advantage of that.
Yes.
She told me I had a cute shirt. Oprah did. I'll never forget that.
There you go.
Yeah,
So
that shirt is still framed in my closet.
There we go. But yeah, so we will be tackling Oprah and a few other pieces of advice.
Talk about what we're doing on our next show.
So we love Amy Poehler. We love her new podcast, Good Hang. But we're going to pull out some advice she gave a few years ago to some younger audience members and kind of break down why we think that might be the wrong way forward.
She had someone write in and ask her for relationship advice. Yep. And you and I both stopped in our tracks like, that's terrible advice.
Terrible advice. Yeah. So we'll break that down and tell you why.
And so every week, kind of how the show will work is we'll tackle popular advice from that week in the first part of the show. And then we have a segment called Can We Talk About It? Where we're going to just talk about something that happened.
Yes.
It can be anything.
Anything.
And then every week we'll give you our thoughts and your takeaways, and we'll go from there.
And we do have an email, which is wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. So if you have, a wrong way forward example or a piece of advice or a scenario that you would like us to break down, we'd also love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And so we thank you so much for listening today. Don't forget to like us, follow us on whatever format you get your podcasts on. We're on Apple, on Spotify. And then, of course, we'd love a great review from you as well. And we will see you next week on Wrong Way Forward. Thanks so much for listening today.
Thank you.
All right, that's a wrap on this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward. Remember, the only thing worse than taking bad advice is giving it.
If you've liked what you've heard, like, subscribe, or follow us wherever you stream podcasts. And if you've got a topic or need some advice we'll probably regret giving, email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward.